Let me tell you a story, my friends. You were the one who showed up with open hands. You were the one who kept giving while they kept taking. You sent the long texts. You picked up the phone when they didn't. You rearranged your time and even your peace just to make space for them. You gave your loyalty like gold, and they treated it like loose change. Over and over again you tried. Over and over again you poured yourself out. And what did you get in return? Silence, indifference, or worse, betrayal so sharp it cut you in places no one could see. And then finally something inside you snapped, not with anger, not with a storm of words, but with stillness. You went quiet, no chasing, no proving, just silence. And for a while they thought they had won. Picture them leaning back with that smug grin, whispering to themselves, "See? I knew it. They gave up. I broke them. In their small little world, your silence was weakness. Your distance was defeat." To them, it wasn't mystery. It wasn't power. It was the final bow of a character leaving the stage. They thought they wrote the ending of your story. But here's the truth they'll never admit. Silence was never the ending. It was only the first move in a transformation they never saw coming. You see, folks, people like this are addicted to noise. They thrive on drama, on explosions, on being the center of your emotional storm. When you screamed, when you cried, when you begged, it reassured them they still mattered. That chaos was proof they were in control. But when you gave them nothing, when you shut the door with stillness, that silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of their power over you shattering. They laughed in the beginning, sure, but even laughter fades when curiosity takes its place. And curiosity, my friends, is a seed that always grows into obsession. Think of silence like a storm at sea. At first, the sailors on the shore mock the calm, saying, "Oh, nothing's happening out there." But beneath the waves, the water is shifting, the pressure is building, and when it finally rises, it floods everything. That's your silence. On the surface, they think it's nothing. But inside, it's the most powerful move you've ever made. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what silence really is. Not a weapon to hurt them, but a shield to protect you. It's not about controlling their thoughts. It's about reclaiming your own. And here's the beauty of it. While they thought you disappeared, you were rebuilding. While they thought you were finished, you were growing. Silence wasn't your defeat. It was your rebirth. It was the funeral of the old you, the one who begged and chased and bent yourself into pieces just to be seen. That version of you has been buried, and in its place, a new you is rising, stronger, wiser, stoic, untouchable. So let me break this lie right here, my friends. They did not win. They never had control. Their laughter is nothing but an echo covering fear, because deep down, they feel it. They feel your absence like a missing heartbeat. They feel your silence like a mirror reflecting their own emptiness. And the truth is, it will haunt them far more than any words ever could. All right, my friends, lean in for this part because it matters. You've listened, you've nodded your head, you've felt those words stir something in your chest. But now it's time to take it from just a thought to a declaration. Say it with me. My silence is power. Don't just think it, write it. Put it in the comments right now so it's not just living in your mind, but stamped in front of the whole world as proof that you are done bowing, done chasing, done breaking yourself for people who never deserved you. When you write it, you're not just leaving a comment, you're making a promise to yourself. A promise that you're choosing dignity over drama, strength over weakness, peace over chaos. Whisper it before you sleep tonight. Let it echo in your chest when you wake tomorrow. Feel how it shifts the way you carry yourself. Every time you say it, you're training your spirit to stay unshaken, to stay untouchable. This isn't just an affirmation, it's your armor. And I'm asking you, no, I'm challenging you, my friends. Step up and show it. If this truth hits you, don't scroll past like it's nothing. Hit that like button, subscribe, stay with me. Because this journey we're on doesn't stop here. Your silence is not the ending they think it is. It's the spark, the first breath of a whole new chapter. And when you believe it deep enough to declare it out loud, everything changes. So write it, claim it, breathe it. My silence is power. Number 1. The mirror effect, why they can't escape your absence. My friends, let's sit with this truth for a moment. When you stopped talking, when you went quiet, when you pulled your energy back after pouring it out endlessly, you didn't just disappear. You transformed into something far more unsettling to them. You became a mirror. And a mirror, my friends, is the one thing no mask can stand against. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's exactly what happens when your silence enters the room. They stop seeing you as a person chasing them, comforting them, holding them together. Instead, they're forced to see themselves through the void you left behind. Every unanswered text, every call that never comes, every day without your voice is like standing in front of glass that won't lie. Now let me ask you something. Why do you think it bothers them so much? Why do you think your absence is heavier than your presence ever was? Because when you were there, they could hide behind the noise. They could cover their insecurities with your affection, their emptiness with your validation, their brokenness with your loyalty. But when you left, when you stopped feeding that endless hunger, the truth crept in. They had to face themselves without you as a buffer. And the truth, my friends, is that they don't like what they see. Picture it like this: a person who's been living in a messy room with the lights off. They walk around pretending everything is fine, stepping over the clutter, ignoring the dirt piling up in the corners. But then someone flips on the light. Suddenly, it's all visible. The stains, the dust, the disorder. That's what your silence does. It turns the light on. And once that light is on, they can't unsee it. They can't escape the reflection staring back at them. Your absence doesn't erase you. It forces them to acknowledge how much they depended on you, how much of their identity was built on your presence. But here's where it gets difficult, and I know you've felt it. Silence is not easy. Your own mind will betray you sometimes. You'll sit there wondering, what if they never notice? What if my silence doesn't mean anything to them? What if they really don't care? That's the temptation speaking. That's the urge to break the mirror before it does its job. And trust me, my friends, that temptation is real. You'll feel the pull to send that one text, to check their profile, to see if maybe they've missed you. But every time you resist, every time you let the silence stand, you make that mirror stronger. Every day you hold back, the reflection sharpens and grows harder for them to avoid. And here's something Jung also believed. People run from their shadow. They run from the parts of themselves they don't want to admit exist. Right now, you are that shadow to them. They'll laugh, they'll distract themselves, they'll post pictures pretending they've moved on. But no distraction is strong enough to kill a mirror. In the quiet moments, when the world stops applauding, when the crowd is gone, when it's just them and their own thoughts, that's when your reflection hits hardest. That's when they start remembering the little things they swore they'd forget. The comfort of your voice, the loyalty you gave without question, the way you showed up when no one else did, and then the irritation begins, not with you, but with themselves. Because they realize what they lost wasn't ordinary. It was rare, and they let it slip away. Think of it like a pond, my friends. When you're constantly throwing stones, texts, calls, attention, the water ripples and shifts. They can't see clearly, but the moment you stop, the surface becomes still. And in that stillness, they see the reflection. At first, it unsettles them. Then it bothers them. then it haunts them. That's why your silence is more powerful than any words you could ever speak. Because silence doesn't argue. Silence doesn't beg. Silence reflects. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Without your presence, their thoughts start to circle back, over and over again. They begin to compare you to others. They measure the shallowness of new connections against the depth you offered, and nothing comes close. They might not admit it, but their soul is being dyed with regret. Slowly but surely. They're forced to face the truth that it wasn't you chasing them, it was you holding everything together, and without you, it all feels like it's falling apart. Now I want you to imagine this. They sit at a table with someone new, laughing at a joke, pretending they're happy, but underneath that mask, a thought slips in. This isn't the same. They don't make me feel what I used to feel. That's the mirror. Or maybe late at night, they roll over in bed, reach for their phone out of habit, and realize there's nothing from you anymore. That silence, my friends, is deafening. And in that deafness, the reflection grows. So yes, it will be hard for you to maintain the silence. You'll wrestle with yourself. You'll want to break it. You'll feel the urge to prove your worth again. But remember this. The mirror only works if it's left standing. Don't shatter it by rushing back. Don't dull its power by filling the space with words that should never be spoken again. Hold your ground, because every second you stay silent is another second they are forced to face the truth of who they are without you. And let me tell you the beautiful part. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need revenge. You don't need to play games. You don't need to chase them down for acknowledgement. Your silence is already the most powerful move you could ever make. It's not about making them regret. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, your self-control. And trust me, when you hold that line, regret will follow them whether they admit it or not. So say it with me, my friends. I am the mirror. Write it in the comments right now. Don't just let it sit in your head. Declare it so it becomes real, because you are not the one chasing anymore. You are the one reflecting. You are the one showing them who they really are. And when they see it, they'll realize what they lost was not replaceable. Stay with me. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep building this strength together. Because your silence is not emptiness, it is reflection. And that reflection is the beginning of their regret and the birth of your freedom. Say it again and claim it. I am the mirror. Number 2. Carl Jung's shadow, how you became their reflection. My friends, Carl Jung once taught us about the shadow, the hidden part of every human being, the side they don't want others to see, the fears and desires they bury deep because facing them feels unbearable. And whether you realize it or not, when you stepped back, when you stopped chasing, you became that shadow to them. At first, they dismissed you, mocked you, made you feel replaceable. They told themselves you were just another chapter, easily forgotten. But here's the thing about shadows. The more you try to deny them, the bigger they grow. That's exactly what happened with you. When you went silent, when your energy no longer fed their ego, you slipped beneath the surface. You stopped being noise in their world and became something much more unsettling, an echo inside their subconscious. They can put on their mask in public, pretend they are fine, smile for the pictures, laugh with new faces, but at night when the noise fades, that mask falls away, and in that stillness, they wrestle with the ghost of you. The memory they thought they had buried comes back sharper, clearer, heavier. Ask yourself this: why do people run from their shadow? Because the shadow shows them who they really are, and you, my friends, are that reminder. You remind them of the way they dismissed real love. You remind them of the loyalty they wasted. You remind them of the version of themselves they don't want to acknowledge, the careless one, the ungrateful one, the one who sabotaged something rare. They don't want to look at it, but they can't escape it either, and that's why your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. Picture a stage with bright lights. In the middle of it, they perform, pretending to be untouchable, confident, desirable. The audience claps, the world cheers, but behind them, stretching longer and darker than they realize, is their shadow. And when the lights go out, when the crowd is gone, the shadow is the only thing left. That's you, not because you're chasing them, not because you're clinging, but because you stopped, because you walked away and left them alone with themselves. And here's the part that might surprise you. It's not just guilt that makes you their shadow, it's desire too. The part of them they try to suppress is the part that still wants you, the part that still wonders about you, the part that can't admit they miss you. They'll fight it, they'll push it down, but the more they resist, the more it lingers. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And right now, their unconscious is you. You are the thought they don't speak, the regret they don't confess, the pull they pretend not to feel. But the more they deny it, the more control it has over them. Let's be honest, though. This isn't easy for you either. Silence feels like fighting your own army of thoughts. You'll wonder if they really think of you, or if you're truly gone from their mind. But here's the truth. Absence doesn't erase you. It embeds you deeper. You become less of a person and more of a symbol, a reminder, a ghost they can't outrun. And whether they admit it or not, they carry you everywhere they go. So don't break the silence, my friends. Don't shatter the shadow by rushing back into the light, because your power lies in what is unseen. Let them wrestle with it. Let them face what they tried to bury, because one day they'll realize that the shadow they fought so hard against was not haunting them. It was teaching them what real love looks like, teaching them the cost of their arrogance, teaching them that some people cannot be replaced. So here's what I want you to declare today. I am the shadow they can't escape. Write it in the comments right now. Make it your truth. Let it become your strength. Because you don't need to chase them, my friends. You are already there, in their mind, in their regrets, in the corners of their soul they can't silence. And that is where your power lives. Number 3, the unfinished symphony, why they replay you in their mind. My friends, let's step into this idea of the unfinished symphony, because this is where psychology and your silence collide. You see, when you walked away, when you chose not to explain, not to fight, not to give them the grand finale they thought they deserved, you left them with something the human mind cannot stand, an incomplete story. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. It tells us that people remember unfinished tasks far more vividly than completed ones. Why? Because the mind craves resolution. It hates loose ends, and you, my friends, became the loose end they can't tie up. Think of it like a song. You know that feeling when you hear a melody but the last note never comes. It hangs in your head, gnawing at you, looping endlessly until it drives you mad. That's what your silence has done to them. It's not closure. It's an open chord that never resolves. They thought walking away, mocking you, replacing you would end the song. But instead, every unanswered text, every day you stay quiet, every moment they realize you haven't come running back. It's like the music stops mid-verse, leaving them haunted by the echo of what was. And here's where it gets fascinating. They'll try to distract themselves. They'll tell themselves, it's over, I've moved on. But their own psychology betrays them. That's why they replay your old conversations in their head like recordings on repeat. That's why they scroll back through your messages, rereading what you once wrote, searching for hidden meaning. That's why they check your page at 2 in the morning, even if they swore they'd never look again. The unfinished symphony of you keeps playing, and no matter what they do, the loop doesn't stop. Let me ask you, have you ever had a dream that cut off right before the ending? You woke up desperate to know what happened next. That's exactly what they feel. They expected drama. They expected begging. They expected your voice to rise and fill the silence. But instead, you walked off the stage and left the curtains open. That incompleteness eats at them more than any confrontation ever could, and the more they fight it, the louder it grows in their subconscious. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And right now, you are their unconscious. You're the song that won't resolve, the story that won't finish, the thought they can't silence. They may think they're in control, but the truth is, your absence is steering them more than your presence ever did. Every time they try to replace you, every time they try to distract themselves, it only highlights the unfinished business they feel with you. And yes, my friends, this is why silence is difficult for you too, because you'll wonder if it matters. You'll ask yourself, do they even care? Do they even notice? But you have to understand, your silence isn't nothing, it's everything. It's the reason they can't let go. It's the reason they keep replaying. It's the reason they feel a weight they can't explain when they're alone at night. You've become the unresolved note in their life, and until they face the truth of who you were and what they lost, the music won't stop. So hold your ground. Don't break the silence to give them the ending they want. Because their desire for closure is not about healing, it's about control. If you give them the final note, they'll package it, label it, and move on. But by refusing to hand it over, you ensure that your song lingers. And every time they hear it, every time the melody rises in their chest, they'll be reminded of what they lost, of who they pushed away, of the rare love they'll never get back. Picture it like a theater, my friends. The audience sits waiting for the final act, the curtain call, the applause, but instead the stage goes dark and the play ends mid-scene. People leave restless, unsettled, whispering about what could have been. That's the legacy of your silence. You've left them with questions they can't answer, stories they can't close, a performance they can't stop replaying. And here's the beauty. You don't need to explain, you don't need to speak, you don't need to write the final note. The unfinished symphony is stronger than any words you could ever say. It will haunt them. It will follow them. And the more they try to move on, the louder it will play. So say it with me right now. I am the unfinished symphony. Write it in the comments so you never forget the power of your silence. Because you don't need to chase. You don't need to beg. You've already become the melody they can't silence, the echo they can't escape, the song they'll replay forever. And if you feel this truth in your soul, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because the music of your silence, my friends, is not weakness. It's the beginning of their regret and the birth of your freedom. Say it again. I am the unfinished symphony. Number 4. When silence turns into curiosity, the psychological hook. My friends, let's talk about what happens when silence ripens into something far more dangerous for them. Curiosity. At first, when you stepped back, when you stopped calling, stopped explaining, stopped pouring your love into their empty cup, they thought they had you figured out. They smirked, told themselves, of course they'll stay quiet, they'll get tired, they always give up. To them, your silence was predictable, nothing more than a sigh at the end of a failed story. But here's the truth that sneaks up on them like a shadow in the night. Silence, when stretched, does not fade. It transforms. At first it feels safe to them. They assume you're hurting, assume you're stuck in the past, assume your quiet means you've surrendered. But as the days become weeks, and the weeks quietly slip into months, something begins to stir inside them. A question, a whisper, a seed. What if? What if you're not suffering? What if you've moved on? What if you're smiling in someone else's arms? What if your silence isn't weakness, but proof you've already found better? That's when the hook of curiosity sinks into their mind, and my friends, once it's there, it doesn't let go. Psychologists will tell you curiosity is one of the most powerful motivators in human behavior. It nags at the mind like an itch that can't be scratched. And the more it is starved of answers, the stronger it grows. That's why your silence over time flips into an obsession. They don't know where you are. They don't know who you're with. They don't know what your life looks like now that they're no longer a part of it. And that unknown begins to torture them more than any argument, any begging, any final words ever could. Imagine this, folks. They open their phone at midnight, scrolling through familiar feeds. Their finger hovers, tempted to check if you've posted something, anything. They replay old conversations, searching for clues they missed. They wonder about your new routines, your laughter, your days. And every time they think of you, another what if takes root in their mind, growing like vines in a forest. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But the second most terrifying thing for them is to realize you no longer need them. And your silence forces that realization to bloom. Now, I know what you might be asking yourself. If they're curious, why don't they just reach out? Why don't they just admit they miss me? Because curiosity and pride are enemies. Their ego tells them, don't show weakness. Don't let them know you care. But the silence eats at them anyway. And the longer it goes on, the heavier that inner war becomes. They want answers, but they're terrified of what those answers might be. So instead, they linger in the torture of their own wondering, trapped in the questions they'll never speak out loud. And this is where your strength comes in, my friends. You must resist the urge to break the silence for them, because the moment you explain yourself, the moment you give them clarity, you remove the hook. You let them escape the forest of what-ifs, but by holding steady, by refusing to fill in the blanks, you force them to live with the mystery of you, and mystery is far more haunting than closure. Think of it like a locked book. They know the story isn't finished, but the final chapters are sealed from them. They can shake it, stare at it, wonder about it, but they'll never read the ending. And that, my friends, drives them mad. Because in their mind, the ending plays 100 different ways. Maybe you're thriving, maybe you're happier, maybe you're already standing beside someone who treats you the way they never could. Every version they imagine stings worse than the last, and every imagined ending puts you further out of reach. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And their thoughts now, poisoned with curiosity, turn against them. They can't stop asking, can't stop replaying, can't stop spinning stories about what you're doing without them. And here's the cruel irony. They once thought your silence was weakness. But now it's the very thing that makes them restless, sleepless, haunted. So don't forget this truth. You don't need to do anything extra. You don't need to post for attention. You don't need to drop hints. You don't need to prove a point. Your silence is already working. Curiosity has already taken root, and the more you let it grow, the more it consumes them. Say it with me right now, my friends. My silence plants curiosity. Write it in the comments so it sinks deep into your bones. Because you are not powerless here. You are the mystery they can't solve, the book they can't finish, the song they can't stop replaying. And if this truth lights something inside you, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because your silence is no longer weakness, it is the seed of obsession. Say it again, my silence plants curiosity. Number 5, the law of contrast. They only see your value when it's gone. My friends, Seneca once said, we become wiser by adversity. And isn't it fascinating how life always has a way of teaching through contrast? When you were there, when you gave freely, when you poured loyalty, patience, and kindness into them day after day, they couldn't see your worth. Why? Because the human mind often undervalues what is consistent. Like water flowing steadily through a river, your love became something they assumed would always be there. They mistook your loyalty for routine. They mistook your forgiveness for weakness. They mistook your presence for something ordinary. But silence, silence is the great revealer. When you stepped back, when you no longer answered, when you removed yourself from their reach, the contrast appeared like lightning across the sky. Suddenly, what they thought was ordinary became extraordinary. Suddenly, what they overlooked became the very thing they couldn't stop craving. Because contrast forces perspective. When they compare what they once had with what they have now, the truth hits like a storm. Imagine this. They walk into a new relationship, thinking they've found better. At first, it feels exciting, fresh, thrilling. But then reality sets in. They notice the small things, the way this new person doesn't listen the way you did, the way arguments don't resolve with patience but with pride, the way laughter doesn't feel as genuine, and slowly, like shadows stretching at dusk, they begin to remember you. Your silence sharpens those memories until they feel the sting of comparison at every turn. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And here's where their terror begins, because in their silent moments they realize that the problem was never you. The problem was their blindness, their arrogance, their inability to see your value while you were right in front of them. Your silence now becomes the mirror, and every new connection they chase feels thinner, weaker, more fragile compared to the foundation you once gave. But let's be real, my friends. This isn't an easy path for you either. Because silence feels like emptiness at first. It feels like you've been erased, like they don't notice, like your absence doesn't matter. You'll ask yourself, what if they never realize? What if they never regret? And those questions will weigh heavy. But here's the truth. Human nature ensures contrast will eventually reveal itself. No imitation can replace authenticity. No distraction can erase what was real. Think of it like sunlight. When the sun shines every day, people complain about the heat. They long for clouds, for rain. But take the sun away long enough, and suddenly they ache for its warmth, desperate for its return. That's you. They thought your light was ordinary because it was constant, but silence, your withdrawal, becomes the night that forces them to remember how much they depended on your glow. And this is where regret begins to bloom, not loudly, but quietly, steadily. They will compare, they will measure, they will search for pieces of you in others and come up empty. Because your patience, your laughter, your loyalty, your forgiveness, those are not ordinary traits. They are rare. And your silence has transformed you into the standard they can't find anywhere else. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And their thoughts now, they're poisoned by contrast. They think of you not because you begged, not because you chased, but because your absence forced them to. They now live with the heavy knowledge that what they once dismissed was in fact irreplaceable. And my friends, that realization doesn't fade. It lingers, it haunts. It becomes the echo that follows them into every new relationship. So hold your silence. Do not rush to prove your value, because silence already does that work for you. Contrast already shines a spotlight on what they lost. And every day you remain silent, that light burns brighter in their memory. Say it with me, my friends. Silence makes me priceless. Write it in the comments right now. Declare it so the world can see, so your own spirit can anchor to it. Because your value was never ordinary, It only appeared that way to someone too blind to see, but now, through the law of contrast, they'll realize the truth. And by then, it's too late. You've already risen, you've already reclaimed your worth, and they will live in the shadow of their own regret. Say it again, silence makes me priceless. Number 6. The Stoic move, living well without them. My friends, here is where silence turns into something far greater than just absence. At first they thought you would crumble without them. They thought your quiet was temporary, a pause before the pleading, a breath before the breakdown. But the true Stoic move, the one they never prepared for, is when you do not return with words at all. You return with living, with thriving, with shining so brightly that your silence becomes not emptiness, but transformation itself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to not be like your enemy." And think about that for a moment. They may have expected bitterness, but instead you chose calm. They may have expected tears, but instead you chose growth. They may have expected a trail of messages and late-night calls, but instead you chose silence as your teacher and life as your reply. That is the essence of Stoicism, not reacting as they expect, but mastering yourself so deeply that their chaos cannot touch your peace. Let me ask you, my friends, isn't it more powerful to live so well that their memory of you turns into a weight on their chest? Isn't it stronger to rise into a life so rich, so full, so steady, that they can no longer pretend you needed them? Because when you thrive without them, you expose the truth. They were never the center of your world. They only thought they were. And now, your silence has proven it. Picture this. They scroll through their feed one evening, thinking of you out of habit. They expect to see pain, maybe some desperate sign that you're still caught in the past. Instead, they see light. They see a glow in your eyes, a peace in your presence, a steady rise in your path. That unsettles them more than anger ever could, because anger says, "You still matter to me," but thriving says, "You're no longer part of my equation." And here's where the wisdom of Carl Jung comes in. He said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." My friends, that is the Stoic move. You are no longer defined by their rejection, their betrayal, their blindness. You are defined by the choice you made to rise, to grow, to rebuild yourself into someone untouchable. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was the soil. And out of that soil, you've grown into a force they can't even recognize anymore. Now, I won't lie to you, living well without them is hard at first. Your heart will ache, your mind will replay the memories. You'll want to prove they were wrong, to show them the cost of letting you go. But the Stoic way reminds us, we don't live for revenge, we live for freedom. To build a life so grounded, so centered, that whether they regret or not, it no longer defines you. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you truly stop needing their regret, that's when it consumes them most. Think of it like a fire. If you feed it oxygen, it blazes up, it burns hot. But if you starve it, the flame flickers and dies. That's what happens when you starve their ego by not reacting. When you don't explain, when you don't beg, when you don't try to prove your worth, suddenly their flame has nothing to feed on. And while their fire dies out, your own grows stronger. Because every day you live well, you fan the flames of your own life, your own peace, your own destiny. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And isn't that the truth? While they crave attention, validation, control, you've learned how to be whole without them. And nothing, my friends, nothing unsettles a person more than realizing the one they dismissed is flourishing in silence, unbothered, unchained, untouchable. So say it with me right now, I thrive without them. Write it in the comments, declare it, anchor yourself in it. Because thriving is not just the answer, it's the statement, it's the roar that rises out of silence. And if these words hit deep in your chest, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because this is the Stoic move, my friends, not anger, not revenge, not chasing, but living so fully that your silence becomes the loudest answer of all. Say it again, I thrive without them. Number 7, the regret spiral, how they come back in their own mind. My friends, let's talk about the spiral of regret, because regret doesn't come crashing all at once like a thunderclap. No, it arrives in stages, slow at first, then sharper, until finally it consumes them like a storm they can't escape. At the beginning, when you pulled away, when you chose silence instead of begging, they laughed. They convinced themselves your absence was predictable, that you'd return, that you couldn't possibly last without them. That first stage is arrogance, the smug belief that your silence is temporary. But silence has a strange way of maturing over time. Days pass, weeks pass, and while you grow stronger, calmer, more centered, something inside them begins to shift. After the laughter fades, curiosity creeps in. They start to wonder, what are you doing? Who are you with? Why haven't they come back yet? That's the second stage. It's subtle, but it plants seeds that grow whether they want them to or not. From wondering comes the third stage, comparison. They meet someone new, chase a fresh distraction, maybe even tell themselves they've moved on. But the truth cannot be denied. Every new interaction becomes a mirror reflecting what they lost. They remember your patience when the new person is quick to anger. They remember your loyalty when the new one's eyes wander. They remember your laughter when conversations now feel hollow. Contrast reveals what they once had, and it cuts deeper with every passing day. And then comes the fourth stage, my friends, the ache of missing you. At first, they dismiss it as nostalgia, just a passing thought. But the thoughts don't fade, they multiply. They hear a song and think of you. They drive by a place and feel your absence. They remember the way you made them feel safe, valued, loved. That ache grows heavier because your silence has denied them the comfort of your presence. They can't reach for you anymore. You're gone, and that void gnaws at them in ways they can't explain. Finally, the spiral hits its last stage, panic. This is the moment they realize what silence has truly done. Silence wasn't weakness, it was the wall that locked them out. Panic comes like a tidal wave. What if I lost them forever? What if they've already moved on? What if they've found someone better, someone who knows how to hold what I threw away? And that question, my friends, that what if, is the one that drives them mad. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And their pain is their awakening. Every stage of regret, every step down that spiral, is their mind forcing them to confront what they ignored when they had you. The spiral doesn't let go, because silence doesn't vanish. It grows. It follows them into new relationships. It whispers in quiet nights. It even slips into their dreams, reminding them of the one person they underestimated, the one presence they can't replace. And the cruelest part, by the time the spiral has reached its end, it's often too late. You've already risen, you've already transformed, you've already built a life without them. While they spiral down, you've climbed higher, and that imbalance, that realization that you're thriving while they're drowning, is what makes regret unbearable. So, my friends, never doubt the power of your silence. It is not emptiness, it is the slow drumbeat of consequence. It's the lesson they never wanted, but will never escape. Their laughter was the first step. Their panic will be the last. Say it with me right now. My silence creates regret. Write it in the comments so it sinks into your bones, so the whole world can see your strength. Because your silence is not defeat, it's the architect of their regret. And if this truth stirs something inside you, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because the spiral has already begun, my friends, and once regret takes hold, it never lets them go. Say it again. My silence creates regret. Number 8. After silence, just do this and watch them return. My friends, here is where everything comes full circle. We've walked through the silence, the shadow, the contrast, the regret, and now we arrive at the final truth. After silence, just do this. Stay silent, stay stoic, stay thriving. Don't break your quiet with explanations. Don't waste your energy on "I miss you." Don't hand them the closure they crave on a silver platter. Instead, let your silence grow roots in your life. Let it shape you, transform you, and guide you into becoming someone so centered that whether they return or not, you already stand victorious. You see, silence is not a tactic. It's a way of life. It's not a trick to bait them back. It's the discipline of choosing yourself above their chaos. The Stoics remind us of this again and again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the heart of this whole journey. When you stop chasing what's beyond your control and start mastering what lives within you, the world bends in your favor. So what happens when you do this? When you refuse to break the silence with weakness, when you live so well that your life glows brighter without them, the universe moves. Their mind turns restless. Their chest grows heavy. They remember. They regret. They return. And when they do, it won't be because you begged for it. It'll be because they finally saw what they lost. Think of it like a flame. At first, they thought they had snuffed you out. But your silence, my friends, wasn't smoke. It was embers. And embers, when fed with self-respect, with growth, with thriving, blaze into a fire they can't ignore. They'll feel its heat even from a distance. They'll see the glow you've become, and in that glow they'll remember the warmth you once gave freely. The irony? They will return, not because you chased, but because your silence forced them to chase their own regrets until it led them right back to you. But here's where the power shifts forever, because by then, you're not the same person they left behind. You're stronger, you're wiser, you're untouchable. You don't need them, you never did. That's the part that shakes them to their core. They realize too late that your silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. It wasn't emptiness, it was transformation. It wasn't the end, it was the spark that made you unforgettable. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And what you chose, my friends, is to become unshakable, to turn silence into power, to let the absence of words become the presence of greatness. That is why they return, not because you begged, but because the universe itself echoed your worth until they had no choice but to remember. So hold fast. Stay silent, stay stoic, stay thriving. Let your life be the proof, not your words. Because when you do this, you'll realize something even greater. Their return is no longer your victory. Your victory is that you didn't need it. You already won by becoming everything they thought you couldn't be.